It's a country that has a long history.
And this is a civilization, really, rather than a nation.
Going to China and learning about Chinese language, Chinese culture and Chinese philosophy is something that helps us to keep a distance from ourselves and to look at ourselves from an extrinsic point of view. So by going to China, I learned so much more about my own culture, my own being, my own roots, precisely because I had the chance to step away from it and to look at it from a distance.
There might have been a point in time when it was kind of okay to think about the world only through Western or English or European terms, because Britain had empire. We got to throw our weight around a bit more. We got to decide a lot of things in international relations. Those days are gone. It's no longer okay to think about the world only in Western terms. Whatever we want to try to do in the world, we're going to have to talk to other people about it. We're going to have to make ourselves understood to people who come from a different tradition of thinking, from a different way of doing things, and who are no longer necessarily forced or made or convinced of the British way or Western way of doing things.
In the last 20 years, perhaps since you've been born, there's been an extraordinary change in the world. I don't mean the internet and social media, I mean the rise of China. From a country that was relatively undeveloped, now to a country that everyone is talking about. Will it be the next superpower? Will it rule the world? And should we welcome or fear that?
If you look at most things, it says made in China. So can you imagine if we didn't have trade with China, how much we would suffer? Like, we'd be empty, pretty much. We'd be relying on our own sources mostly, and imports from other countries. And since China's got the most resources,
it's got one of the world's strongest economies too, so it's very important to keep trade.
So without China, we're kind of
stuck.
Yeah.
They make pretty much like everything.
Yeah.
So trade is definitely really important. And even at school, sort of when we're told to do working drawings and show the measurements, the sort of whole idea is you're going to give it to someone else to produce it that you're not going to meet.
As a world factory, China produces over 50 billion garments to the world every year, over 60% of the shoes, 70% of smartphones, 80% of air conditioners, and 90% of personal computers in the world.
Traditionally, we hear about China as made in China, because China is a very important manufacturing power. It's the world's factory. However, in the recent years, we also saw a slowing down of the Chinese economy, and the main reason is it cannot always be export-driven. What is very exciting in China is currently the information technology, and everything is very digital. I'm very amazed, how digital it is, and China is one of the largest, concentration of internet users. The internet is, everything, in China, and as we all know, China is a very large population. It's almost 1/5 of the global population. So you can imagine you have potentially 1.4 billion consumers waiting for products as well as for services. If you look at the watch, I'm wearing the Apple Watch. It's not actually made in one country, it's made in different parts of the world and assembled in China. For young people, you really need to understand the global environment because companies are operating globally.
Innovation doesn't happen just in one place in the world, even Silicon Valley. And of course, Silicon Valley can't run without a huge number of migrants that it gets from all over the world.
Why do you think that British people of your own age should care about China? Why does China matter to them?
We all have the best food in the world.
And I think there are many major misunderstandings about China and about Chinese culture. So I think teenagers in Britain, maybe they're interested in know what China is really like and what Chinese culture is really about.
When China comes to mind, you don't really think of their politics. You think more of their tradition. You think of their noodles. Kung Fu Panda. Since you're a child, you think of that. What comes to mind when you hear of China? Oh, Kung Fu Panda.
I don't think that people our age necessarily think about China that often because it's so far away. And
general sort of attitude people get is, oh well, they know English, so it'll be fine. We don't need to learn Chinese. Cause
I think that might have to change in the future though, because England isn't actually the focus of the whole world anymore. So to have a relationship, you need to both give the same amount of commitment.
My name is Li Jiaxing. I come from Guangzhou, China. I have been here for 10 months. At first, I can't even speak a sentence. I can't speak a long sentence, but now I can talk to the foreigners. Most important thing I have learned is the interact with different people from different background, cultures.
Learning a new language is always like a discovery, and it provides you with the possibility to look at the world from different eyes. Chinese is one of the very few logographic languages still in use. This means that there is not an alphabet. It means that every word, every notion, every object has a character. To learn such a rich and different language as Mandarin Chinese is something really special, and something that, especially in a country like UK, where people speak English, which is a language, it's nowadays a lingua franca, where it's spoken everywhere in the world, well, it's something that could provide people with a completely different understanding of the world. I lived in Beijing for almost 4 years of my life. It's a completely different place, architecturally, politically, culturally. So going there was not just like going abroad, and was not just like learning a different language, was really like stepping into a completely different conceptual world.
Do you think China matters to the climate and our environmental future?
Massively.
Definitely.
Yeah.
China's one of the biggest, probably the biggest country that produces product, and they have a lot of people, which means a lot of cars. Especially like going into the Beijing Olympics, they had the policy if you can drive on every other day. And they're putting out massive amounts of gases into the atmosphere. And the impression I get is they're less interested in the environment than other countries perhaps are.
And what they're doing impacts the whole world, so we can't just forget about what's happening.
China has extraordinarily serious environmental challenges at the moment. They breathe the air every day, and they know that it's a problem. So this is creating incredible political pressure within China about the environment. And that means that arguably in the world today, the place where there is the most momentum, the most drive to deal with environmental challenges is in China.
China is facing a lot of the problems now that are being forecasted for the future for the rest of the globe. It provides kind of the perfect snapshot of what a potentially difficult environmental future might look like. Probably outside the United States, China is the largest kind of stakeholder or global player in terms of world food security. It's the second largest maize producer behind the United States. Obviously a huge rice producer. You've seen this kind of hyper increase in industrialization and in modernization of the economy and of society, but at what cost? And I think you can go to China and you can see it immediately when you're on the ground. Wow, this is a big problem.
There is such energy in China's big cities at the moment. Such an extraordinary amount of change going on. It's intoxicating, to be honest. It's hard not to feel that history is happening around you.
Whatever happens in China will have an impact, here also. And I often joke with my students. I say, now, when China sneezes, the whole world will catch a cold, because we are living in such connected, economy. And what we really need to understand, our, international neighbors, whether they are close by or whether they are far away.